what is Live 9 all about? Live 9, it's been a while since we've seen a new upgrade, which is well worth the wait in my opinion. Ableton has been kind enough to let me show you a behind the scenes look at some of these new features. What they did this time, they have a special audio to MIDI conversion process that they came up with so that you can take recorded audio such as these drum samples and split them into new MIDI information based off of their frequency range. So as part of my workflow today, I'm going to show you guys how to build kind of a drum and bass track based off of this audio to MIDI conversion. We go down to convert drums to a new MIDI track, which is going to be a control-click command here. And it's going to do this little offline process. And it's going to create a new drum rack with the default instrument on it. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like. I'll just mute this track. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll bring in the other one and we'll see how phase coherent these guys are. You hear any phasing? That means that they're pretty on time. So if you can think about the application for this, here I've got a tool that will allow me to go in and take stems, say I'm working on a remix for someone, and just strip it and be able to assign my own sounds to it straight off the bat. Now that I have a drum rack, if I just drag it and drop it on there, immediately it knows what I want to do. So now we have 3 different beats, and let's hear what those sound like. Not bad, right? How easy was that? Super easy. And what I like about it is that now all of them are cohesive. They're all the same sounding, and they provide me with the rhythmic content that I need to start making my fat drum and bass track. What we're going to do next is we're actually going to go in and we're going to layer our sounds. So one of the things that I find super useful in production is creating your own sounds, creating your own instruments. I don't want to just make it, anybody else's kick drum. I want to make it my own. And what I can actually do is I can layer sounds together in a drum rack. And I think this is something that's a little less known, but you can actually create layers within your drum rack. And we're going to add a sample. And in order to do that, we're going to take a look at the browser. So we've got a different browser. And this took me a few minutes to get used to because now you don't have the tabs along the side for each one of the different sections. You've actually got 2 divisions here, browse and places. Browse is going to allow you to search for different types of information, sounds, for example, up at the top. These will give you your patches categorized by a type of sound rather than categorized by a type of instrument. So before you had to look through and go, okay, I want an operator patch, I want a synth lead. Now all of your synth leads will be found in one place, and you'll be able to search according to sound rather than search according to instrument. So that's pretty standard. Down here in places now, this is where you're going to load your own samples. So all of these relate to, some type of folders located on my hard drive. So there's no specific way to just kind of like navigate. You actually have to add a folder now. I have some single hit samples that I already picked out here, and I categorize these myself. And what I want to do is I kind of want to beef up this bass drum. So if I took and I just dragged and dropped one of these samples onto the kick, what I've done is I've actually replaced that kick. So standard drag and drop. It's a little beefier kick. However, if I want to start layering these sounds, which I do, there's a little modifier key secret that if you hold down Command while dragging these, yeah, let's add that one. You can actually add these to your selection. So what I've created is actually an instrument rack. So if you look here, it says instrument rack. And that's going to be triggering both those samples. 2 kicks are better than 1. The other thing that you can do is you find that particular chain, you click on it. That's what we're looking at. You can drag and drop these audio effects directly onto this particular chain. So let's say that we wanted to add some redux, which is bit reduction. So you can just start making it nice and snappy. So I can add that to either the whole entire chain, or I can add that to just one particular part of that chain. If I grab this and dragged it inside here, now I'm just putting that inside this second snare drum. So that just gives me a little bit of kind of white noise to play with in terms of building a more provocative sounding snare. So it's time to move to bass. And I have a loop, which is a very simple loop. It's just, once again, a recorded audio loop. And if I hit play on this, it sounds like that, which isn't bad. It just is kind of, 1 to 2 dimensional sounding. And the deal is, if I speed this up or slow it down, it's still going to be in time with my session. But if I slow it down too much, it can sound kind of grainy in certain instances. And the other thing is, it's somebody else's loop. And I think I can come up with some better sounds. And I want to be able to create quick variations. Once again, right-click, choose Convert Melody to New MIDI Track. That's going to rip the MIDI notes out of that audio, and it's going to assign it a default instrument, which is kind of this cross between a synth and a piano. So we throw this in. Here's a slider. Once again, this is all part of the preset default. You can convert it from piano to synth. You can add vibrato. You can add brightness to it. I created 2 more MIDI tracks, and with Live, you have the ability to create these patches and to save your patches. Now, once you're saving your patches, you're going to be saving them into your user folder rather than to the library itself. So what we'll do is we'll grab these patches. I have something called sub bass, hip hop sub bass. I'm going to drag it and drop it. That's going to give me one of these operator instruments, and it's going to come with kind of a bunch of these extra effects added to it and all of these macro controls. So somebody has programmed all of these controls to be parameters that they thought would be useful in terms of control, modulation. And that's another thing that I'm really, really big on in terms of music production. It's not about how many sounds you put into your track, it's about how you modulate those sounds over time. I'm going to grab this other thing called this mid bass here. And so if I hit play right now, I'm only controlling one bass. So instead of dragging and copying out this MIDI information to the other 2 tracks, and then I have to hit play on those instruments as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this routing setup where I'm going to take the MIDI from this track and I'm going to route it to the other 2 tracks so that as I do these variations, I don't have to keep copying clips all over the place. So now I have layer of bass. So I can go in, and what I normally do is start adding EQs and start kind of shaping these frequencies. So to do this, I'm going to go up to Audio Effects and I'm going to grab EQ 8. This EQ has been improved. So for those of you coming from Live 8, they've added this really cool ability to see your frequency spectrum here. And EQing out unwanted frequencies, you have the ability to see it in a larger view. You also have the ability by clicking on this speaker icon here to solo whatever band you're working with. We have the addition of 2 new filter settings. These are going to be your 48 dB slope cuts. So these guys are really serious in terms of like weeding out information. And we also have that on the high end here too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and I'm going to go ahead and cut through some of this. And then once we hit play, you can see where the information starts. What I like about that is nothing, nothing, nothing. Oh, that's where the actual sound starts. So all this harmonic content that's outside of that spectrum is being eliminated. So that's really going to alleviate mud. You type in over here in our notes view, you could type in a range. So the bottom here, the lowest note is F0. If we went in and typed in, for example, A3, so we just transposed that up to A3. Command Z, get back to where you were. And then we have this thing called reverse and invert. So we could reverse this entire pattern if we wanted to. Command A, select. And if I went in and hit reverse, took the first note and put it last, and it took the last note and put it first. Now it's funky. I just went from drum and bass to funk. What we can also do is invert this. So if we hit the invert button, boom, it doesn't change the order of notes where they're located, but it flips the top and the bottom. So now we have this could be really useful for creating kind of breaks or creating variations of different sections and coming up with different ideas. Ableton provides us with MIDI effects as well as audio effects. MIDI effects go before instruments and are used to modulate the data that is being fed into the instruments itself. So you can have a MIDI effect and then an instrument, and then since the instrument is generating audio content, that audio gets streamed out. You can process that with an audio effect and then modulate all of those things. Up here at the top, we now have a new button which is going to allow us to record session data as envelopes. And if you look within these clips, right now we're looking at, the notes view, but there are other envelope views here. You can pretty much automate about anything in Live. And all of these relate to either the clips or the MIDI controls or the plugins themselves. So if we went to our Arpeggiator and we went and turned on, for example, device on or off, or in this case, we want to do something like the gate time. Here's that envelope. So we could either go in here by hand, and now Live has a new single-click function for adding nodes. And you have the ability to use these stretch markers now to stretch your automation. And you also have the ability to curve your envelopes. So if I hold down Option, Live will give me the ability to curve. If I unlink my envelope from the clip itself, it allows me to add modulation longer than the loop length. And that's another key to making tracks that don't sound repetitive and loop-based. Have longer amounts of modulation. If you do 16 bars of modulation, that's going to be 16 bars before it gets back to the same modulation you just did. I'm going to go ahead and hit record. And you can basically jump in on this anytime that you want. So let's do that again. So go. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is so much fun. Like really, I can't tell you. I mean, I didn't have this pre-rehearsed. I had an idea about what I was going to come in and make today. And the end piece that I did is based off of something I came up with at home. But the beauty of this is I'm able to add different types of expression every single time I sit down to make this music. I have brought in this loop here of a guitar, an acoustic guitar. Okay, so first and foremost, a couple of things are going on here that are kind of making this not really easy to work with. One of which is that it's being stretched so far that it sounds super grainy and horrible. The other thing is it's just not really the right type of instrument to go with the idea I have for creating this drum and bass track. But what I would like to do is rip it out and gut it for its pieces. So what we're going to do now is use the convert harmony to MIDI track, which is the third new algorithm that they have. So we're able to break things out according to chord structure and harmonic content. Pretty impressive, right? I have this snow pad that I was going to try and use. And it's going to provide me with kind of that harmonic textural type content. So this is one of the new Ableton patches. And if I select it, I have all this expressive control over this. So I get arpeggiators. I also have this ability to bring in kind of a noise floor to add to it, a release, and an attack portion. I'm going to take all my ideas from here in the session view. I'm going to jam those ideas. I'm going to record that into the arrangement view where I can go in, edit them, mix it, and turn it into a final product.
We'll be right back.